Great grapes! Part 2. Let's do the big reds of the world. And by big, I don't mean big-bodied, although that does constitute some of them. But the most common red varietals you'll come across, again, to re-stress, to reinforce, to always push you to expand your horizons. This is just the top dozen or so that you will probably be most familiar with as you start drinking and continue drinking. There's tons of other crazy stuff out there. By all means, go try more stuff. We're going to group these into lighter reds, medium reds, which can kind of go either way, and then big, full-on, big-bodied reds. And we had a debate about whether to include this grape or not, but why not? As a common core, we can start with lighter reds like Gamay, one that you actually won't see in too many places, but it kind of is an important grape simply because of Beaujolais, which you may or may not have heard of. The only other category, or grape I have in this category, is Pinot Noir. So how would you describe those grapes here on the light side of the grape variety spectrum?
I would say with lighter flavors, cherry, berry. You also, with Pinot Noirs with some oak, will give you some leather, some really nice earthy characteristics. But cherry is probably the most common fruit descriptor of these wines.
And that's just in the Pinot. Would you throw the cherry into the Gamay as well?
I would say for some, maybe a black cherry in the Gamay.
Yeah, those things, the Gamays are jammy, just fruity. And the particular style, that Beaujolais Nouveau that comes out once a year and to much hype and acclaim, although decreasing hype and acclaim.
It is decreasing quite a bit.
Yeah, to me, they're almost like wine Kool-Aid. They're fruity and they're a little lighter, but Pinots in general on the light side of the spectrum.
On the light side for the most part, absolutely.
Okay. You want to say anything about stylistic variation?
Stylistic variation, the better producers will use oak lightly and really let the complexity of the grape come about. And surprisingly, these wines can age. The better quality ones can age for quite some time. But the vast majority you see are going to be drink them now.
And again, they're on the light side, physically lighter in color when you see them when you're swirling them in the glass.
Absolutely. Yep.
And you really won't see any huge dark Pinots. I don't think I ever have. I'd be a little leery about it if I did. Okay, so light reds. And again, Pinot's one that's world acclaimed now since the movie Sideways came out. Everybody's raging towards Pinot. But it's just one of many reds. Let's move on to some other ones. I'm not even sure we got in the lineup here. We're looking at a pretty broad spectrum of a whole bunch of different varieties. And we put these two on the end because they can be done in a lighter style, but typically more medium. And let's start with this. Well, this is Gigondas. That's a region name. That's a little terrifying for the uninitiated. So what's in this bottle?
By law, Gigondas are mostly Grenache.
Grenache is the great name to know.
Grenache is the most planted red grape in the world.
Wow. Because you just had so many Grenaches and seen them so often in so many places, right? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
What are they doing with all that Grenache? Because you can find varietal Grenaches. You can see more and more of them. But what has people mostly done with Grenache over the years?
Over the years, it's blended into all the wines in the southern Rhone, all over the Languedoc in France, and all of northern Spain. Grenache has grown quite a bit. It's also grown a lot in Australia, as well as California. All those box wines, a lot of them have Grenache in them.
But I've always considered Grenache more of a workhorse grape variety in terms of it's the base for a winemaker to put other stuff on top of.
Absolutely.
I think most of the planning is used as the base component of a blended wine from the Rhone or from Spain. But again, you're increasingly seeing more Grenaches and well-done Grenaches as simple varietal wines on their own. And what are the common descriptors of Grenache?
I would go with the lighter type flavors like cherry, but also go for the raspberries and a little bit of spiciness to them.
Yes, I like that. And as we already pointed out, you can see lighter styles of Grenache. You see medium or fuller bodied styles of Grenache. Okay, so Grenache. And now let's go on to, well, this says Chianti on it. Darn it, that's another region. But what's the main grape in Chianti?
The main grape in Chianti is Sangiovese, one of the most planted grapes in Italy.
Sangiovese. Central Tuscany is what I always think of. And how would you describe Sangiovese to the uninitiated?
Sangiovese, a little bit darker than Grenache, a little bit more serious, more going towards black raspberry and some spicier flavors. It's
I always think of Sangiovese as a little more acidic too, at least the way they produce them. Now that's stylistically.
Yes, stylistically, that would be the Italian way to do it because the Italians make all of their wines to go with food, and so you want higher acid.
Yes. So Sangiovese, just a fantastic wine out of mostly Tuscany, but increasingly all over the place. And again, can be lighter, but actually can be heavier too. That's up to the winemaker. Let's go to, oh wow, what the heck is this? Another region. Brunello di Montalcino. That's way too fancy for intro wine drinkers. What grape's in there?
That also is 100% Sangiovese.
Surprise!
It also is from Tuscany. However, there's different clones of Sangiovese, and this was a darker, richer one.
Mm-hmm.
And just to put this on the label, it has to be at least 4 years old. So it's a bigger, powerful wine that will age for decades.
And again, we just included that. It's like, yes, this one's a little lighter, this one's a little heavier of that main central Sangiovese flavor profile. Let's move to, what is that?
This is Tempranillo from Spain.
Spanish Tempranillo.
Tempranillo has many, many names in Spain. This one is Tinto de Toro, is what they call this grape. It is, once again, Tempranillo. The great grape of Spain. There are a lot of grapes that are being grown in Spain, but when you look at the really famous regions, Rioja, Ribera del Duero, Tempranillo is the main, if not the only grape in those wines.
And when I say Tempranillo, what's the first thing you think of, description-wise?
Oh boy, for me, leather comes to mind. Even though there's some really nice fruits, there's some black raspberry type flavors. Tempranillo, I get this leathery characteristic along with some cinnamon and spicy characteristics, clove.
Yeah, I like those. Are all good descriptions. I like that. Tempranillo, again, another one that you might not see a whole lot of varietal expressions around the world. Mostly a Spanish wine, you say?
Mostly Spanish wines.
Mostly Spanish grape, but people are experimenting with it, and you're starting to see a lot more Tempranillo put right on the label, because again, that's how we identify and recognize wines. Let's move to, everybody recognizes this one, Zinfandel. And what do you think of when you think of Zinfandel?
Spice. First thing I think is spice, pepper.
I think of Big Jammy, usually.
Big jammy, spicy, peppery wines, yes.
Yeah, exclusive to California, although we're getting ahead of ourselves on the region outlook, but big, jammy, fruity, plummy.
Maybe some plum. I don't normally think of Zinfandels as being that darker fruit, but
And I know,
there are some red plums out there.
Yeah, and I know that people that don't like Zins, especially older ones, say that it takes on a pruny characteristic sometimes.
And they can get so ripe that they're almost as a prune-like characteristic.
Yeah,
the ripeness of the fruit.
It's such a dark berry, and it can get so overripe that you just kind of think of overripe flavors of all those dark fruits.
Absolutely.
Zinfandel, awesome. I almost want to put this one in the big boy category, but it can kind of go. It's pretty versatile. It can kind of go in multiple ways.
In general, I would say it's not as tannic as the big boys.
Yeah, and you know this from a previous lecture. Of course, you can make this into white Zinfandel, you can make it into blush Zinfandel, or you can make it into a full-bodied red. We're talking about the full-bodied big boy version here. How about, Cabernet Franc. Now we're getting into some classic varieties
Classic
here.
variety. This is from Bordeaux originally, and Virginia is planting it quite a bit, and you're starting to see it more and more all around the world, not just as a blending grape, which is what it originally was, but now it's becoming the main grape.
And you'll, of course, recognize the word Cabernet in front of the word Franc. Who the hell is this Franc guy? Now, it's Franc, and Cabernet Franc is related pretty closely to
It is the parent of Cabernet Sauvignon.
the parent grape of Cabernet Sauvignon. So if you know what a Cabernet Sauvignon tastes like, and we'll get to that one in just a minute, you kind of have an impression of what Cabernet Franc is, except how else would we define the uniqueness of Cabernet Franc? I know, I was thinking of the briar. Briery, vegetal, it has a funk to it.
It does have a very funkle to it. It
In a
absolutely
good
does.
way. Don't be scared of the funk, all right? Don't be scared of radical flavors. Sometimes they're flaws, but in the case of Cabernet Franc, you'd be like, I've never had anything quite like this. And when you say briery, people say, what the hell does that mean? Well, once you've had it, you'll know it. You can go chew up some leaves or some vines out in the woods, and it's like, yeah, I got that flavor, and there's hints of that in there.
Yes.
Any fruit or berry characteristics?
The berry characteristics, I would go towards like the lighter berries, boysenberries, things like that.
Okay, so Cabernet Franc, and again, we'll talk in a minute about where the stuff is from and where it's produced, but you're seeing a lot more of these. This is starting to become, I won't say real popular, but a discovered grape in today's world, where people are saying, hey, that used to be just a blender grape in Bordeaux, but I think I want to make 100% Cabernet Franc, and you're seeing these pop up all over the place. What else do we have in the medium-bodied, full-body category?
This is a Monastrell, also known as a Mourvedre.
Monastrell, actually, there's a whole bunch of pseudonyms for this one,
There
isn't
are
it?
Mataro.
Mataro, Monastrell, Mourvedre, all the same grape, named differently in slightly different places.
And one of the top 5 most planted red grapes in the world.
And again, you probably don't recognize the word because there's not a whole lot of just varietal wines made out of it, but that's changing again because we here in America understand wine through the grape, so increasingly they're putting stuff out there, just that grape in this one wine. How would you define Mourvedre? Because this is a little trickier one, I think.
This one's a little bit trickier, but it's bigger, it's bolder, it's heading towards the big boy category. It's got more tannins, it got darker fruit. You're looking more to like black raspberries, blackberries. It's a richer style, like big red.
Yep. Again, used to be the kind of the backbone blender down in the Rhone, right?
Yes, this is
it adds a lot of oomph to wines it's blended into.
Yep.
So it can be pretty serious in its own right, and that will lead us on to the next big category, and that is the big category. Big reds, huge reds, can be huge reds. And these are ones that actually more of you might be familiar with. Hopefully you've actually heard of some of these grape varieties so far, but I'll bet you've heard of some of these other ones. In fact, where do we have the Merlot at? Maybe we should start with Merlot.
We can certainly start
because
with
that's
Merlot.
the one that almost everyone in the world recognizes. Merlot, impressions.
Impressions. It's the most planted grape in all of Bordeaux, and it is a rich style wine that unfortunately California has really worked to make it thin. But it actually produces some big full body wines, and it's got nice blackberry fruit to it and just a good medium to full body tannins.
Yep, blackberry or jammy. I say red plum in that one as well. And some people would hint at cherries. A little
Cherries,
bit,
yeah,
depending upon the style.
Yep.
But all in that kind of dark fruit category. And Merlot, even we put it in the big boy category because it can make really big wines. But I think it's perhaps the most versatile, maybe one of the most versatile of the reds, which is why it's so planted in so many places. Is you can have a light-bodied Merlot, you can have a full-bodied Merlot, it can be darker, it can be lighter, it can be huge, it can be simple. And a lot of folks make fun of Merlot in today's world because the market got flooded with it for about the last 2 decades. So it was produced, like Chardonnay, it's produced almost everywhere on planet Earth now. People do Merlot, and it's become synonymous with, that's the wine that non-wine drinkers drink. It's like, don't undersell the stuff. It's a big grape, it's a classic grape, and it's in lots of different places for good reason. It can make really great wines. Now we'll go to one perhaps you've not heard of, and it's another region named Barolo. I don't know what Barolo is. That's a place. What's the grape?
The grape in Barolo is Nebbiolo. And Nebbiolo is grown almost exclusively in the Piedmont region of Italy. It's not really grown anywhere else. People have tried to grow it other places. It doesn't grow very well, but it makes incredible wines. In fact,
Gigantic wines.
its nickname in Italy is the King of Wines and the Wine of Kings.
Ooh.
And it may be the lightest of these wines in our big red section, but it's so tannic that it will age for decades.
And what are some unique attributes of Nebbiolo? Because you just don't see it in that many places.
You don't see it that many places. Like I said, it's lighter in body, but it's got this dark, tannic, leathery, just
tobacco,
dark cherries.
Yeah, quite distinct for those particular flavor profiles. Let's move on to, that's a Shiraz, isn't it?
Shiraz.
Syrah or Shiraz, depending on where you're at.
Shiraz and Syrah. Syrah is from the Northern Rhone originally. It's now planted all over the world, and this is a big, jammy, spicy. It's probably the first word that comes to me on this one. This one's very spicy, and just
it's a very spicy meatball.
Jammy fruit wine.
It's full in every capacity. I'm sorry, did you pick out a particular fruit flavor that people associate?
Probably blackberries would be first.
And big. Sometimes aggressive out of Australia, and can have big tannic component as well.
Big tannins.
But the Australian style making it is that even though it's huge and huge fruit flavor and huge tannic component and maybe even huge acid, you can drink them when they're young. It's their stylistic. It's like, you can go ahead and drink these.
Absolutely.
And people do, and the Australians have made tons of money off of the Shiraz, but it came originally from southern France in the Rhone region. And let's go to finish off our big ones here. Malbec,
From Argentina. Originally from France, but this is a big, full-bodied, darker than even the Shiraz. Lots of fruit, lots of jammy tannins. It's blackberry, mulberry type flavors.
Mulberry, nice. You hear us repeating a lot of things too, by the way, and that's because we've classified these in such a way. It's like, yes, all of these descriptors of dark fruit really apply to all of these in greater or lesser extent, but all about the same flavor profile. The big ones, almost everybody uses the word jammy at some point. Is it jammy, plummy, fruity, blackberry, raspberry, this berry? It's like, yep. And once you start trying these, you're like, yeah, I got that big time. Anything else about Malbec?
Not that I can think of right now, because
Okay.
we really want to get to the Cabernet. The king of wines.
We saved the king for last, although many of these would be considered kings of their respective regions and countries. Cabernet Sauvignon. We started with Pinot Noir, perhaps the most popular, trendy red grape right now, but Cabernet Sauvignon, perhaps the most popular and not so trendy wine grape over all time. All right. So, what do you think about Cabernet Sauvignon?
First descriptor probably comes to mind is cassis or black currant. Even bigger and blacker and darker than blackberries are all the other descriptors we've been using. This is just full-bodied, over the top. The great Cabernets can age for a century.
So we're all going to stock up on that and wait 100 years. Not going to happen. Is this the one that we would sometimes say has like a cedar component or a spiciness that's also quite unique?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, and again, this is now planted all over the place as well, originally from Bordeaux. And on that note, let's go back to the start. Or you know what? Let's go in reverse. So now we're going to go back in reverse down our lineup and talk about other names and particular regions that do these things really well. And back to the king. Cabernet Sauvignon is king of
Napa Valley and Bordeaux.
Bordeaux originally is where it's from, but now Napa, California makes huge cabs. And how would you differentiate the style between just Bordeaux and California?
Bordeaux's in general are made to be ageable. You really shouldn't drink them for 5-10 years. Napa cabs tend to be a little bit riper fruits, so they're jammier, and they don't necessarily need as much time in the bottle before you can drink them.
Totally agree, absolutely. And would both of them have kind of the oak age, oaky, toasty, vanilla components?
In general, anybody who's going to be charging you $50 to $100 a bottle for cab is going to be aging it in really good oak barrels too.
But you could probably find $5 to $10 cabs, which is probably true of most of the wines we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And just as a general rule, and I'm just making this stuff up on the spot, when people say, well, I want to be introduced to some of these wines, so I'm going to go get a $10 or $5 cab, what could they expect? Compared to the descriptions we've just given, what could you expect from a cheapo
A $10,
cab?
$5 cab, I would expect it to be light, fruity, slightly tannic, not too tannic, and you're probably not going to get much oak barrel in a less expensive wine because oak costs money.
Which means you might probably taste more berry flavor or fruity flavor.
Exactly.
And again, that's true as we go back down. But King of Bordeaux, King of Napa, now grown, and anywhere that has a hot enough climate to pull off big red grapes is growing cab. It's really big. That and Merlot and Cabernet Franc. Well, we should point out, in Bordeaux, or blended wines, Cabernet, Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Merlot. Merlot is usually the base of the Bordeaux blend. Okay, let's move to
Malbec.
back down the line. Where's that stuff from?
This one specifically is originally from Cahors in France.
Small little region in France.
Small region near Bordeaux, and it is a blending grape in Bordeaux, but only like 2-3% of the plant in Bordeaux.
Now it's the king of...
Now it's the king of Argentina, where it's by far and away the most planted grape. Hundreds of thousands of acres planted.
Yeah, I think it's probably their most exported wine.
Yes.
Either that or
absolutely,
Toronto.
by far.
Yeah.
Well, this way out far.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that, again, Malbec came from Cahors, this dinky little region in France. Nobody in Europe drinks Malbec. I'm not even sure that anybody would even recognize what Malbec is in Europe. This is kind of an old world grape that didn't really find itself till it came here. And that's what I love about all these varieties is that people are experimenting with them all over the place, and we don't even know what the future awesome wines may be because maybe they're not in their right location yet. Malbec's case in point.
Yes.
Let's move. Actually, case in point.
Shiraz.
Let's go to Shiraz/Syrah.
Originally created in the northern Rhone in France, southern France, and now it's planted all over the world, but most famous in Australia, where it's Shiraz. And
for reasons no one knows, they respelled it. But if you have a Shiraz, it's the same grape as Syrah. It's more of an expression of stylistic difference, actually. When people say this is a Syrah, it's more what I'd call austere. You're smarter than me. Shiraz is from Australia, bold, aggressive, big, and everything.
Yes.
How would you characterize if someone's going to call their wine a Syrah and not a Shiraz, how would you characterize
I
it?
would describe it as not being as ripe. So when you have less ripeness, you have more acidity, you have a wine that will probably age longer and soften up with time. Shirazes being jammy tend to be drinkable earlier, whereas Syrahs you might want to wait some time for.
Absolutely, totally concur. And the other thing I wanted to point out is we've mentioned Rhone several times, and actually several of these grape varieties are from the Rhone.
Absolutely.
So we pointed out Syrah, pointed out Mourvedre, we pointed out Grenache. Put those three things together, Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre. That's actually the classic recipe.
For Chateauneuf du Pape.
Chateauneuf du Pape, or isn't a lot of Rhone wines?
A lot of Rhone's wines.
A lot of wines from Rhone, and here's a map of where Rhone is. She'll do that later. Yeah, the GSM is the acronym that you'll see. Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre. That's classic Rhone, but increasingly, people in California and Australia are saying, hey, we like that blend, we're going to do that here. There's a whole lot of exciting GSMs, and actually Syrah's coming out of California now.
Indeed, yes.
Paso Robles.
Awesome.
Paso Robles, great little region in California, specializing now, I think, in Grenache, Syrahs, and Mourvedres. All right, let's move to Barolo. This one's easy.
Yep. Pretty much only grown one place in the world, and that's in the Piedmont in Italy.
Barolo is the name of the region. It's synonymous. Again, they don't have to put the word Nebbiolo on this bottle. You know it's Nebbiolo in the bottle. That's what they do. There's one other place, though, that you can get a Nebbiolo.
Just down the river from there is Barbaresco.
Barbaresco, another little dink region in northwestern Italy, and they only do those particular, that 100% Nebbiolo. And we will say, what's the difference between a Barolo and a Barbaresco?
A little bit less expensive for the Barbaresco.
Yes.
That's the main thing. Really, the wines inside are extremely similar. The soil is very similar. Almost everything's the same. It's a little bit cheaper to buy Barbaresco.
I think they're a little lighter in style, a little lighter. It seems to me that Barolos are so gigantic when they're produced that they physically have to be aged for 10 years because the tannin expression is so over the top that it would be unpleasant. Think back to our balancing your wine lecture. Right. So they have to let the tannin soften in that. Barbaresco, if you want to try Nebbiolo, go for Barbaresco. They're accessible earlier because it's softer, a little lighter. Now we'll go to, Merlot!
Another Bordeaux grape variety.
From Bordeaux.
From Bordeaux. This one is an outstanding example of Washington State.
Yes.
Which does great Merlots too. It's also grown in California, all over the world, Australia. But most famous is the most planted grape in Bordeaux.
Yeah, and for anyone who wants to diss Merlot, they should understand that it's usually the biggest component of Bordeaux wine. So we like, Cabernet Sauvignon's the king of Bordeaux. And it's like, yes, it's a huge, big grape variety. This is usually 50 to 60 or 70 or 100% of Bordeaux blends is Merlot. And now we're the Washington State's one you should also try. And where else can you get Merlot? Everybody wants to get on the Merlot bandwagon. All right, let's move to, I forgot when this one is because it's such a pretty label.
Mourvedre.
Mourvedre, okay.
Which you can see in your Chateauneuf du Pape blends. You can see it in blends from northern Spain, from southern Europe.
All right. Again, and that's, we've already talked about it, the component of the Rhone blend, the GSM, Mourvedre, Monastrell. It seems to me that people are experimenting with making varietal expressions of this more across lots of different regions in Spain. Does that sound right?
Yes. This is from southern Spain, but you can find it from all over Spain. You can find it from all over
southern
Australia
France.
even.
Yeah. Okay. So look out for that one. Now we'll move to Cabernet Franc.
Another one of the big three Bordeaux varietals. It's also grown in the Loire Valley, where it's grown by itself, and it's starting to be grown more and more all throughout Europe, America, and in Australia.
Yep. And again, we're not just touting the local terroir because we live here, but Virginia actually produces quite a bit of Cabernet Franc now as a varietal wine. And they're starting to pop up in California and all kinds of bizarre places.
They are.
This, again, is a classic example of the modern wine world. This was a workhorse grape. It was blended in other stuff. It was never made into a varietal wine, but it sure is now. And it's interesting stuff from lots of different places. Zinfandel.
Zinfandel.
This is another easy one.
Easy one. This is all California. But
California.
we throw a caveat out here. After it originally came from Europe, came to California, got really popular in California. Then about 100 years ago, it went back to Europe and they planted it in southern Italy where they call it Primitivo.
Primitivo, another word for Zinfandel. But you're really only going to see Zinfandels out of California. It's their big king red grape, and it's big.
It's very big.
All right, and now to
Torrontés. Not Torrontés. Tempranillo.
Tempranillo.
Tempranillo. This is the big grape of Spain, and
Spain's
it's
king.
all over northern Spain. And most people are familiar with Rioja, the most famous region in Spain.
Rioja, yes. Much like Cabernet Sauvignon is to Bordeaux, Tempranillo is to Rioja and many other Spanish wine regions.
Right. And I mean, for me, Ribera del Duero, which is south of Rioja, even better quality wines, almost all Tempranillo also.
Ribera del Duero. Yes. Again, this is the king or the duke of Spanish wine is the Tempranillo. Good stuff. And again, you don't see those too many other places outside of Spain. And by the way, I kind of like that. There's certain places specialize in certain things and they do it really well. I like experimentation too, but if you want to try the real expression of the ones we're talking about, go to the source. Go to where they started. How about...
Once again, we talked about Sangiovese, and
we
this
got a
is
couple.
only from Tuscany is where you'll see these. Most of the Sangiovese in the world is planted in Tuscany, but it's being more and more planted in California and other places around the world.
Yeah.
Argentina.
Central Italy is king for Tuscany.
Absolutely.
Tuscany, if you see the word Chianti again, that's a regional name, but it's mostly Sangiovese with other stuff thrown in there.
Absolutely.
And then again, this one is 100% Sangiovese, this particular clone called Brunello. So, mostly Central Italy, but increasingly in lots of other places too. Let's jump to
Grenache, most planted red grape in the world. All over northern Spain, all over southern France, all over the Rhone Valley, all over Australia. It used to be one of the most planted grapes in California because it was the base for a lot of the box wines that came out of California.
And we've already now pointed out that it's also the component of the GSM blend in Southern Rhone and other places. And it's, again, the workhorse. It's probably, much like Merlot is to Bordeaux, Grenache is the base upon which the GSM blend from Rhone is based upon, is the bulk. And almost finally, we got one more. I guess we'll go to Gamay.
We don't need to.
Pinot Noir.
Pinot Noir. Most famous from originally Burgundy, where it starts. Also Champagne is a place where they grow Pinot Noir. And in the New World, Oregon has become world famous for their Pinot Noirs, but New Zealand is also starting to get more famous for their Pinots.
And just to reinforce the lesson here, we already said that if you have a white Burgundy, it's 100% Chardonnay. If you have a red Burgundy, again, this is the regional name, Burgundy, it's almost always 100% Pinot Noir. So red Burgundy equals Pinot Noir, white Burgundy equals Chardonnay, although they don't typically put that on the bottle, but they increasingly are. And stylistically, to reinforce, how would you describe the difference between, say, a classic standard Pinot Noir from Burgundy and the kind of what I consider new wave of Pinot Noirs from Oregon, a place that I think is fantastic for Pinot?
Well, I would throw a caveat in here. I would say that California, Russian River Valley
and
more
California.
New World.
Okay.
Oregon is a real beautiful blend of the Old World and the New World.
I agree.
There are a lot of actual producers from Burgundy that are now in Oregon making Pinot Noirs in Oregon in a Burgundian style. So Oregon kind of bridges the two. Whereas Napa Valley,
Burgundian style, I like that. Burgundian style.
whereas in California, they definitely do the New World. Let's do lots of jammy fruit. Let's put lots of new oak in there. Let's make the wine taste like the New World.
Right. So California Pinot, more fruit expressive. Burgundy Pinot, more austere.
More austere, higher acids.
Higher acids, and again, that's what throws people off because they're like, "Oh, I've had this Pinot from Oregon or California, so I'm going to try it from France. That's where it's originally from," and it's basically two different wines. It truly is radically different. To me, Burgundies need food. They just don't have that fruit-forward expression, whereas California does. And Randall pointed out quite awesomely that Oregon's somewhere in between. They kind of have the best of both worlds. It's more balanced all the way around. I just love the Oregon Pinots. Anything else about Pinot? And finally, I go from wines that I love to wines that I don't. Sorry, Beaujolais, not a fan. I said that almost all red wines from Burgundy are 100% Pinot Noir, and 99.9% of them are. But there is this, because Beaujolais is actually a sub-region of Burgundy, and they do 100% Gamay. And do you see it anywhere else?
You really don't know.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of a fruity, fruit-forward, easy, Kool-Aid-y kind of wine, grape and wine that they make it into, and we probably have already spent too much time on that.
Probably have.
All right. Well, those are, again, just a dozen or so of the most recognized red grape varieties and the wines that are produced from them. And we also threw in some region names that are particularly known for growing that particular grape and expressing it in a particular way. But I want you to experiment. Go get some Greek red wines. Go get some Romanian red wines. Go get some South African red wines. Oh, we actually forgot South Africa. We often do. But don't be scared of ones that aren't on this master list that we just came up with. There's probably another 200, 300, 400 grape varieties out there of just red that you just haven't heard of yet, but you're going to see them increasingly in your wine stores and on your wine list as more people want to experiment with more flavors. These are the big ones you're most likely to see everywhere right this second. Anything else? All right, thanks so much, Randall, and that is our great grape lineup, reds and whites.